Our first Jihad Watch of 2013. Hold on. Oh, no, I've just heard that apparently international Islam has said peace, tranquility, coexistence, pluralism, and... Oh, no, that was a misprint. Anyway, Robert Spencer joins us every week for Jihad Watch. Robert, always a pleasure. How are you?
Just great, Michael. Thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty well. So much. Where do we begin? Oh, Obama officials who were aware of Benghazi, covered the whole thing up, should have been fired, if not on trial at this point, still on the payroll. Is that true?
Yes. Not only should they have been fired, they actually were fired. We're talking about, in particular, Eric Boswell, who was the Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security. And he was listed along with Charlene Lamb, who was the Deputy Assistant Secretary responsible for embassy security, and Raymond Maxwell, another official. They were listed as being responsible, supposedly. I mean, I think they were the fall guys for the Benghazi debacle. And then a congresswoman, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen from Florida, found out that Boswell was still on the payroll. And so even if they were made to bear the responsibility for the errors and the face-saving, the transparent attempt to save face about their support for the the Libyan rebels, who turned out essentially to be jihadis, even if they were the fall guys, they were not made to take any fall. And so, in other words, nobody has been held responsible for Benghazi. Obama and Clinton are responsible for Benghazi, and they should be the ones. And the whole thing is just an ever-escalating cover-up.
Yes, it is. And when we say payroll, we're not talking about a derisory amount of money here. This is a very, very high salary, which they're entitled to, but only if they do their job properly. So what we learn from this is actually they're still part of the team. Speaking of money, now, the Israel-Palestinian issue, of course, is one that moves on and on. It'll take years to solve, if ever. But one of the open wounds, the great public lies, is that people in Gaza are starving. Now, those of us who've seen what goes on there know this is just laughable. $1 billion of Western money is pumped into Gaza. That could feed everyone there forever, very, very well and handsomely. Where's the money going?
Oh, I'm sure it's going to line the pockets of the officials. Although I'm also sure that the people, the Palestinians in Gaza, they're not starving. You know, we've seen, Michael, I'm sure you've seen the luxury hotels, the sumptuous shopping malls, the outdoor markets overflowing with goods. And also, remember that this $1 billion budget doesn't even include the $400 million that Qatar has pledged, or also direct aid money from the United Nations Human Rights Agency. That's not even in there. And so the thing is that this is a group that's essentially drowning in money. And the public relations campaign that they perpetrate on the world to portray themselves as being, and this is, of course, a very common thing that's being said, the world's largest outdoor concentration camp, as if, it boggles the mind. And then people believe this and talk about how oppressive the apartheid state of Israel is. It's obscene.
It really is, because I'd be the first to admit there are valid issues here that have to be dealt with from the Palestinian point of view. It's not all perfect. Israel is not completely impeccable in this, although I think it's still one of the greatest democracies in the world. But this notion that people are... they sold out of the new iPhone within minutes. They had to order more in Gaza. People are well fed. There's a lot of space. It's closed in on one side by Egypt. I mean, yes, people would like more opportunity to travel freely. I understand that. But if the terror stops, the borders will be open. If we could just move on from this, I don't want to dwell on Israel-Palestine, but, well, I suppose actually this one does involve Israel, because the Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, now, from one side, the United States leading this, God knows how, we're being told that they're a moderate government and they just want peace and they understand the West. When you stretch away at the surface, they're extremely radical, and their leader has said things about a neighbor with which they have a peace treaty, Israel, saying this country has to disappear from the face of the map within 10 years. You imagine if the US said that about Canada, or France said that about Belgium.
It's the only state that anybody can say it about, and nobody seems to care. And it's really appalling because, you say that the Israelis are not perfect. I think they're pretty close, because this is a state that actually sends notifications out and notifies the people in the area. But we're going to be bombing this area in Gaza because there's a Hamas rocket launcher there, and they warned the people to get out. What state has ever done that in history? You know, you contrast that to the bombings in World War II in Dresden and so on, and the nuclear bombs. It's astonishing the scrupulosity the scrupulousness that the Israelis have manifested, and yet this genocidal annihilationism is taken for granted as being something that's acceptable discourse. Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood president, it was just revealed today, 2 years ago, made a speech saying there could be no negotiations with these descendants of apes and pigs, which is a Quranic reference to the Jews, and they had to just fight until Israel ceased to exist. So it seems likely that with the deputy chief of the Muslim Brotherhood's political party saying Israel is going to cease to exist, with Morsi talking this way several years ago, the Camp David Accords are on the ropes, and all free people ought to be supporting Israel, which is the only democracy and the only state that has any regard for human rights at all in the Middle East, instead of buying into this jihadist propaganda.
Yeah. Last one, schools in the United Kingdom. Just today we learned that there is a legal case, unbelievable really, where an Islamic family are suing a Christian school in Britain because the school said to their 9 or 10-year-old child that she couldn't wear the hijab. But British Islamic schools turning out not good British citizens who happen to be Muslim, but young jihadists who want to destroy Britain.
Yes, it was a report that came from the Department of Education that it was kind of a weaselly report, but I know that in the politically correct atmosphere in Britain today, they have to do these things. They talked about the Plymouth Brethren and Orthodox Jewish schools as well, but really the main focus was on over 100 Islamic schools in Britain that are teaching jihad hatred and Islamic supremacism, the necessity to wage war against infidels. And these schools, some of them have turned out actual jihad terrorists. So this is no abstraction or any kind of joke, and it shows up here again the danger of believing these politically correct dogmas about how Islam is a religion of peace and the vast majority of Muslims reject terrorism. Even if the vast majority of Muslims do reject it, they're not doing anything effective to stop it from being spread in their communities, and that's the big problem.
But Robert, thank the Lord they mentioned the Plymouth Brethren schools, because, I mean, we all live in fear every day of being attacked by a member of the Plymouth Brethren. As always, a great pleasure. Happy New Year. Thank you, my friend.
Happy New Year, Michael. Thank you.